Hi, Rebecca here with part 3 of the Breast Cancer Chronicles. And today I wanted to share with you a little bit about my experience of the surgery and the start of the reconstruction surgery that happened at the same time on December 17th. So essentially going back to the breast cancer itself, there's different ways, different options that women have depending on a number of things, depending on what kind of cancer, how large of an area it encompasses, in what proximity to the nipple it is found, and also whether it's spread in lymph nodes. Based on that, there are a couple of things that may or may not be an option, and one is skin sparing surgery, and the other is nipple sparing surgery. So if the cancer is found too close to the nipple, for example, then the surgeon will say, not a good idea to leave that intact. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to make an incision right across your breast. You're going to have a lovely scar all the way across. Although after it heals, it's very, I've seen many breasts since this experience of mine. I have found that women who have had breast cancer surgery are unabashed and, hey, do you want to see mine? Yeah, I'll show you mine too. And so we're very open about sharing our racks with other women. It's kind of freeing, actually. So these little incisions right here on the side, those are for the drainage tubes that come out, and depending on how much breast tissue you had to begin with, whether or not your lymph nodes had to also be removed, can determine how long that drainage process will go on for you. In my case, it was about a week. The other option then is if the surgeon says the type of cancer that you have, where it's found, is far enough away from the nipple and the skin that they can spare both, then they'll do something like this, where they cut down underneath the breast and remove the tissue. Your breast, then, the technical term for that becomes, or that skin becomes, a skin flap. That is what is written on the notes that I read, a skin flap. That's kind of weird. Anyway, then the plastic surgeon, as soon as the one breast is done, and in my case there were two, as you know, the plastic surgeon's right there, and it is what he did was then he separated. Like, you just can't put a breast implant underneath a skin flap. You have to put it underneath the muscle. So you need to insert this capsule between the ribs and the chest wall itself, so that the chest wall can protect the implant that's eventually inserted. So they sew you back up, they send you home, and so you have these drains hanging out of you. They're about 2.5 feet long, and at the end, if you think of like a turkey baster, one of those, the knobs at the end of the turkey baster, you have like two of those. They're clear, so you can see what's kind of flowing into them, and those need to they keep suction on so that this fluid is being pulled out of your body. And again, depending on how much mass is taken out and whether lymph nodes were involved, depends on how much fluid your body's going to produce. So you try to get as much of that out as possible. That will help the healing, and you need to have somebody drain those twice a day. Fortunately, my wonderful husband did that job for me. I don't see there's any way I could have done it, and it made me sick to even watch it. But because he is a plumber, and he says he has seen the worst that the human body can produce. So it did not bother him at all. He was a great nurse husband. So let's see. What else did I want to share with you? Yes, there is something I'm going to share next week about a complication that a small percentage of women have, and I am having it on my left side, so I'll talk about that next week. But the other thing is, and this is what I really want to encourage hospitals to do. So after the surgery, you can imagine 3.5 hour surgery, massive, massive pain. on all kinds of drugs, and then they want you to get up with these tubes hanging out of you and get back into your clothes that you brought. There's like no way. and then sit down in the wheelchair and be wheeled out. And I had the presence of mind to say, you know what, I'm keeping this gown on. Now, this beautiful gown, normally you would think of hospital gowns as, the kind where your rear end shows. They still have those. They still have those. But what they gave me at Skagit Valley Hospital is this beautifully made gown, went down to my ankles, lovely, very, very attractive fabric. And it sort of wrapped me like a burrito. So had these snaps here and here. The back had sort of a double flap, so where the fabric went around and snapped. And these snaps made it easy for my husband to unsnap and drain those drains twice a day, because you have to start here and then push all the fluid down into that little turkey baster thing, and then empty that out, measure it, put it back on, put suction back on it, and then you wait for another 12 hours. The other nice thing that gown had is pockets for those receptacles already built into the gown. So I said, I'm wearing this home. Just hope that no one stops me at the door and, accuses me of stealing, because I did plan on returning it, and I did at my first opportunity. But this is what I would say to any hospital, and I guess they all have different practices, is just let women wear, first of all, invest in a beautiful gown like that one, functional, beautiful gown, comfortable, and let women wear that home from, after a surgery, if they choose. And if they're in the process of doing reconstruction, which is much more traumatic to the body, they're going to be more likely to thank you. Then once I was not wearing that gown, I needed to find something else to manage these drains. And so what I did, you can go to Nordstrom and you can buy a beautiful camisole with little pockets for those drainage receptacles. You can buy hoodies. You can spend all kinds of money on this. But I started thinking, like, I'm only going to need this for a week or two at the max. So what I did is I just looked in my drawers. And if you've been to any conventions of any sort, you probably have these guys hanging around. And this particular one had a loop at the bottom, which of course, you could sew that on. And then we just used 2 bobby pins. You could use little carabiners because those little turkey baster things, those little receptacles, have a loop also. So you can string that loop into here. Now you can shower with it. It fits under anything. And it was perfect, and it didn't cost me a dime. So that is my other tip. You don't need to spend a lot of money on something that you're only going to be using for a week or two. You may have something around your house or something that you could make. You could make this very easily. All right, I think that's it. Next week I'm going to share with you about this complication that I'm having on my left side that my surgeon told me at the very beginning. He said a small percentage of women have this thing happen, and I'm thinking, oh, it's not going to happen to me, but it did. And so I'm going to tell you how that's resolving next week. Next week I'm going to go in for my first injection of more fluid into these capsules. And so I'll tell you about that and how that works. I'm really not looking forward to this because they have to basically use a big syringe and go right through my chest and go. And then I'll be having another surgery probably in March. So I'll tell you more about that next week, but just wanted to basically take you through the surgical process. And again, I have found there are different ways that surgeons and plastic surgeons work together. So this is just one technique that is used. There are others out there. I hope this was helpful and at least maybe interesting to find out more about how this process worked, at least in my case, and I'll see you next week.